Hello everybody and welcome back to Chaos Head. Because we have the holidays coming up relatively soon-ish as of when I am recording this part, in fact they're basically next week, I figured I should probably get a little bit further ahead on recording this series as well as Baldur's Gate, especially because I also plan to start a brand new series sometime in January, so we're going to go ahead and actually basically record 2 more parts. Usually I only record 2 parts right now because I only have 2 series that are recorded, but yeah, I should probably get a little bit ahead, I kind of figure. So we're going to go ahead, like I said, and record a couple extra parts this week. Let me go ahead and get my timer started and we can begin. Since then, I'd stopped hearing hallucinations, but I couldn't stand staying in the classroom any longer, and I spent nearly half the day cooped up in the bathroom waiting for classes to end. The reason I didn't return to my base right away was because I was still attached to the idea of maybe being able to meet Rimi. So after classes ended and everyone had gone home, I snuck back into the empty classroom. Rimi would be waiting there alone, and she'd smile when she saw me and... I thought maybe she'd say that to me. I hoped, just a little, for such a development to take place. But no one was in the classroom. Of course no one was waiting for me. I tried going to the courtyard. This was where Rimi had told me, "I'll be there for you." But now no one was there. Only the purple flowers blooming in the flower bed swayed forlornly, blown by the autumn wind. I took the vermilion handkerchief out of my bag. I had received it from Rimi back then. I experimentally sniffed it, but because I'd washed it, the floral scent had vanished. I had the handkerchief, but not its scent. I had memories of her, but Rimi wasn't here. There I was, wanting to see the girl I'd made up in my head. Haunting the school building after classes. Pressing a feminine handkerchief to my lips. It was so damn creepy, I thought I'd retch. I left school and stumbled around aimlessly. Nothing seemed to matter anymore. My anxiety about the possibility of being attacked by Shogun and Yua had drifted off somewhere as well. On the contrary, I hoped they would be kind enough to kill me painlessly. My mind had gone into utter depression mode. As I regarded the central district of Shibuya from this perspective of mine, its atmosphere was brutal enough to accelerate my gloom. No one walking along the road was smiling. They glared harshly at their surroundings. Something in the air made it seem as if it wouldn't be strange if the people passing me started fighting with me at any moment. Simply walking along like this, I spotted a number of stores with closed shutters, though they would normally have been boisterous with customers. And I had a vague sense the number of cars on the road had decreased as well. The jumbotron that always noisily blared out sound was now silent. In exchange came incessant, far-off police sirens, cars honking their horns and squealing. There were no signs of how I'd caused such a riot at the plaza a week ago. Though it hadn't yet vanished from people's memories, perhaps I was already gone from the city's memory, chased beyond the far side of forgetfulness. It would have been nice if I could forget every one of my memories as well. Knowing nothing, being ignorant, remaining a fool. And people like that must surely live rose-colored lives and relish every single day. I had a feeling that Senna had told me so. What's wrong with being naive? People aren't. I'm not all that strong. We're always seeking someone else's salvation. I couldn't do anything on my own, nor did I want to. I stood in the center of the street and closed my eyes. Knowing only part of the truth, as I did now, was the most burdensome of all possible situations. The Shogun and D-swords, for instance, I hadn't wanted to know about them, but I'd found out. That said, if someone asked me, "So what are they really?" I wouldn't be able to come up with an answer. I didn't know the answer. Shall I try to die? I thought as I looked up at the roof of O-Front. If I died, perhaps my memories would be reset, and it would be possible to replay everything. Say, person behind me, what do you think? Your role-playing utterly failed this time around. You were wrong in how you cultivated your character. You should have gone with a cooler, more heroic character. It had to be someone sociable and kind to girls. One who would challenge the strong and aid the weak. One with a fiery sense of justice. You can't defeat the last boss with me. You can't use me to clear your game. Don't expect anything of me. Reset me. I'm begging you. Take this worthless self of mine and erase it. No one erased me. Instead came the impact of someone banging into my shoulder. I thought I was hallucinating. I'd heard the female version in the morning, so this time it must be the male version. Not that I'd asked for one, I'd rather have a more moe-voiced hallucination, one I could fap to. But if they whispered sexy lines by my ear, I'd have a boner right in the middle of town.
無視してんじゃねえぞ。なあてめえ、西条だな。どうなんだ、やらせ超能力少年。この前テレビ出てたよな。ギャラいっぱいもらったんだろ。ちょっと顔貸せや、エスパー君。
I opened my eyes. 3 guys stood there, surrounding me. They wore baggy clothes and had yellow, silver, and red hair. 2 had piercings in their ears or their nose. 1 had a piercing in just his ear. 1 was the type of Gangaro man who are so rare nowadays, they're practically a protected species. Ah, here's my death flag, I thought. Was this another unhappiness trap? Really, they came one after the other. I'm telling you, I don't care anymore. Hurry up and kill me, because then I'll get reset and become reborn. Do you have a knife or 2 ready with you? Stab me properly so I die right away. My knees began to shake from fear. I yelled on instinct. It was close to a scream, but I couldn't pay attention to appearances. I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. I was lying about not caring. Even in such desperate circumstances, I don't want to die. They covered my mouth, I couldn't say anything. They grabbed my arms on either side. That was when I stopped resisting. They dragged me to an uninhabited alleyway. I launched a preemptive strike against the leering trio. Apologizing in a quivering voice, I prostrated myself. I held my wallet out to them. The delinquent snatched it. Or, you know, someone who just only ever eats convenience store food. Prostrated, I let out a breath of relief. Apparently, they were going to let me escape. I don't think they said that at all.
俺らの仲間に入れてやるよ。入会金は100万円な。これ強制。本当はすぐ払ってもらうとこだけどよ。今日の夜までにしてやるよ。
1 million yen, you say? That's quite a lot of money.
まあ、なんか超能力使って見せてくれたら、半額にしてやってもいいけどな。なんか言えよ。超能力見せろっつってんだよ。できねえの。できねえのかっつってんだよ。
Pain ran through my side. I thought I might have broken a rib. I couldn't breathe. I began to feel faint. I had vertigo. The foot of the thug in front of me entered my field of sight. The tip of his shoe came flying toward my face with incredible force. I wondered what had happened. I thought I'd felt enough pain in my face to make me pass out, but it might have been my imagination. I figured I'd open my eyes, but my eyelids wouldn't move. The darkness wouldn't disappear from me.
どうする？このくらいにしとく？もうちょっと痛みつけといた方がいいんじゃね？あのダーススパイダーの兄ちゃんもそう言ってたじゃん。
Okay. Interesting.
ボコボコにしてくれって言ってた。こいつボコるだけで金くれるなんて、よっぽどこいつのこと嫌いなのかもな。というわけなんで、続きまーす。俺らのこと恨まないでね。
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to kill them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to kill them.
おい、何土地狂ってんだよ。ふざけんなよ。なんだそれ。おい、よせ。やめろ。やめて。やだ。
Okay. Well, something's happening. But we're not allowed to see it yet. Or maybe at all. The faint light of dusk filtered through the hospital window. The twilight-colored light sharply divided the middle of the room into that which was bright and that which was dark. What it made visible was snow-white sheets covering a bed, a handheld game system laid beside the pillow, a number of scholarly books lined up along the shelves, the pale purple petals of the cosmo flowers arranged in a vase. It was an orderly room, nothing moved, a space where time seemed to have stopped. A window that cut a piece out of the dusk sky, a small figure sat in a wheelchair by the windowsill. His back facing the window, he remained motionless. His breaths were so gentle and came so far apart as to make one think he might be dead. His skin was covered in wrinkles, his cheeks were gaunt, his eyes were sunken, not a single hair grew on his head. How can you tell that? He's wearing a beanie. An appearance that evoked uncertainty about whether to call him a boy or an old man. The shadow of he who called himself Shogun elongated all the way to the door. There, for the first time, the world moved. The door gradually opened, and someone came from the dark alleyway toward the sunlight. Sakihata Rimi stood still at the threshold without entering the hospital room. The sunlight illuminated her tormented expression.
やめよう。
Okay, shit's getting real.
残念だけど。あの彼は、西條匠は、消すべきだよ。
You could just not. That's fine with me. You could just not. Shogun didn't budge an inch at her words.
どうして？危険だから。
Grief infused Rimi's voice as she answered. Her eyes, too, appeared faintly damp.
私が、消そうか。
ダメだよ。
Ultimately, even Rimi couldn't discern whether he moved his mouth when he spoke.
彼には、やってもらわなくちゃいけないことがあるんだ。
Rimi's hair fell forward as she hung her head, and she quietly pushed it back with her fingers.
例えば、あなたは、夢に見たことを覚えていられる？
うん。
そっか。私、すぐ忘れちゃうんだ。
Okay, what's going on with Rimi that she apparently does not remember her dreams for very long, but Shogun does.
できる人と、できない人がいる。
Sure, but the fact that this is being, brought up in a dialogue regarding whether or not to kill our main character is kind of important. And feels like it's gonna, point to something that we should probably know as the player.
できる人はきっと、ロマンチストなんだね。
Considering Shogun says he can remember, I don't know if he's what most people would refer to as a romantic.
すごく長い。長い夢をよく見るよ。
And I don't mean romantic as in, you know, writing romance type things or being charming or anything of that nature.
見ている間は何年にも感じられる。
私も、そうだった。そうだった気がする。でも、それは幻。実際の時間としては、寝ているうちのほんの2、3秒程度のものなんだって、夢って。
I don't feel like that's quite right. That dreams only take place in 2 to 3 seconds at some point while you're sleeping.
心の歌方なの。だから、早く目覚めて、出ないと。いつか、あなたは、西条匠に殺されちゃう。
それでも構わないよ。夢から覚めるわけにはいかない。この夢は、完結させなくちゃ。
完結した夢の後には、何が残るの？
Okay. Don't see why we needed to get a frontal shot where we only saw the lower half of Rimi's face down to her shoulders. Seems a little weird to give us a shot like that unless we're supposed to somehow infer something from it. Someone shook my shoulder lightly. It was very constrained, and moreover, their hand left my shoulder after shaking me only once. This sounds like the transfer student going by that noise. I sensed someone peering into my face. My consciousness was awakening little by little. The ache in my body revived together with it. The scent was piercing my nose, vivid and nausea-inducing. It was the smell of blood. My upper lip stung. The inside of my mouth tasted like I'd licked a piece of iron. I slowly opened my eyes. I was in the same alley as before. I lay face down on the asphalt, and right before my eyes was a tiny, brownish puddle, akin to something you might see leaking out of raw garbage. Grimacing at the stench, I roused myself. I hurt all over. My face was in particular pain. It burned and stung as though someone were bringing a lighter closer and closer to me. A familiar girl knelt close beside me and watched me with a teary-seeming face. The transfer student. The girl who joined my class. What was her name? Oshihara? I wonder why she was here. And she does not speak. She makes these type noises every so often because she just can't get a word out. The transfer student held something out to me. My wallet. Why did she have it? Still dazed, I looked around. The trio of delinquents who had quarreled with me earlier had been lying there, covered in blood. What was this? Someone had totally worked them over. Their faces bore no resemblance to how they'd originally been shaped. Were they dead? They didn't stir. It couldn't be. The 7th New Gen incident? Who would do such a thing? Was it me? Had I? Speak, transfer student, speak! The transfer student stood up and, still pale, beckoned me with her hand. Tears in the corners of her eyes, she looked back and forth between me and my confusion and the fallen trio. And she abruptly seized my hand and tottered off into a run. When we arrived at the main street, the transfer student let go of my hand. Although we didn't run for a long distance, she already lost her breath. Of course, our character also struggles with the whole speaking thing, so... Both of us had fallen silent. Maybe the transfer student was just as bad at talking as me. No shit. Come to think of it, it might have been coincidental, but I never heard her speak. No, that sort of thing didn't matter. More importantly, I had trouble understanding the situation. Those 3 thugs had picked a fight with me and battered me. It seemed like I'd passed out, but how long had I been unconscious? Oh, delusion time. About 5 minutes, says the random female voice in our head. We did green last time. So let's do red. Again. I heard it again. I figured someone I knew was nearby, talking to me, but I didn't spy anyone likely. Damn it. Why did I have to start hearing oral hallucinations today? Also, why would it be anybody that we know nearby? Like, what? Did they just stand there outside the alley, watching the whole thing go down, and wait for us to, at some point, come out and be like, hey, you were in there for about 5 minutes? No, that doesn't seem likely. Our character is seriously having hallucinations. And I don't know why his first thought was that somebody he knew from, presumably from school or class, had spoke to us. Like that, no. Oh shit. She has telepathy. Which meant, startled, I'd look up at the sky. A vocal attack by Shogun? Was he monitoring my thoughts? He was attacking me via satellite. Crumbling under the pressure, I cradled my head and squatted in place. He was gonna kill me. He was gonna kill me this time for sure. I hadn't done as he'd said at O-Front, so he'd moved into action like this out of fury at me. What should I do? How could I protect myself from his barrage? As I thought about it, I myself flung into despair. Or I found myself flung into despair. I had nowhere to run. An invisible attack from outer space aimed at me with pinpoint precision. Even if I took cover, it was precise. It would pierce straight through to me, no doubt. There was nowhere I could hide or run anywhere in Japan. It was the end. I had already reached my end. What do you mean, Kozupi? You trying to knock me off guard with such a moe voice? Why do you insist on prowling after me? What do you plan on doing with me? Explode my head? Make my brain melt? Or my brain alone melt away into goop? Or kill just my brain and turn me into a vegetable? No, I didn't want that. I don't want to die. Someone prodded me in the shoulder as I curled up in a ball, cowering. When I fearfully raised my face, the transfer student was there as before. She poked my fingers and attempted to speak. She poked my fingers and attempted to speak, but nothing came out. And in the end, she raised a tentative hand. Orihara Kozue. I could faintly recall hearing that name from Izumi a long while ago. Kozue. Kozupi? No way. This voice was being sent straight into my head? The transfer student nodded with all her might.
Telepathy.
Can you control it? Is that maybe one of the reasons why you don't talk very often? Is because you're hearing a bunch of people's thoughts and you just can't bring yourself to speak when you're being bombarded with other people's thoughts or something? That's ridiculous. The source of the voice was her, you mean?
西条くん、大丈夫？
No, our character has literally never once been okay. Facing downward, the transfer student looked up through her eyelashes and pointed at my face. Her fingertip trembled.
って出てる。
What's dripping? I touched my face. The space beneath my nose was wet. I had a nosebleed. The transfer student offered me some pocket tissues. I suppose it's better than pocket sand. I had an eerie feeling as I accepted them from her and wiped the blood coming out of my nose. The transfer student...
クズピーだよ。
We're just gonna call you transfer student. Kozupi wasn't moving her mouth. She wasn't talking. Despite that, why could I hear her voice?
心の声なのら。
Right, voice of your heart, definitely. Don't talk like that. It's a turnoff to hear it in the third dimension.
ごめん。
Hey, could she hear the voice of my heart too?
聞こえるよ。
普通に話さないなんで？
恥ずかしいし。
And just reading people's minds and telepathically talking to them isn't gonna potentially result in issues? Really? I see. I could understand how she felt because I was the same. We're not quite the same, dude. We're just not. She looked around nervously, like a small animal, took a glance at me, then began walking toward the station by herself.
ここ、離れた方がいいと思う。
Why? Perplexed, I followed her. I noticed it as I walked. There was a stable pain in a stabbing pain in my side. Since it throbbed every time I took a step, I stopped when I couldn't stand it any longer. I held my side and took a breath. There were so many people. I freaking hate Shibuya. It felt like everyone who passed by was laughing at me. It felt like all of them were watching me. I began to think that everyone knew my face. Don't laugh at me, or don't look at me. Don't laugh at me. I wanted to rest someplace where there weren't any people.
ほいじゃ、いいところがあるなら。
That wasn't an open invitation for you to take us to a place where there aren't very many people.
ご案内します。
Still wasn't an open invitation. Kozupi's energy level was blatantly different from the countless times when I'd spotted her at school. Also, if she can read minds, it kind of makes me wonder if she was reading our mind when we were having that delusion about her previously. And though she was wordless in real life, her mental voice was so,
わあ、今、うるさい女って考えた。
knowing our main character's tastes, probably wasn't going to say noisy or nosy, was probably going to say moe, to be honest. It was convenient to be able to have mental conversations, but also kind of disagreeable. Rather, I'd ended up accepting it right away, but how did this work anyway? Could it be a real psychic power?
やっぱり、コズピーのこと、気味悪いよね。
Well, you know, it's not every day that somebody reads your mind and telepathically talks to you. So yeah, it's a little creepy.
こんなの普通じゃないし。
No, it isn't. I don't mind things that aren't normal. Lately, I've had a lot more opportunities to encounter other eccentrics. Besides, you speak kind of weirdly, but you aren't scary, and you don't have crazy conspiracy theories, which makes you preferable to the rest of them.
そう言ってもらえると、うるうるってなっちゃうのら。
But your facial expression for the sprite here didn't update to an expression that I would think is happy. Kozupi abruptly started crying as we walked along. Surprised, I hastily returned her tissue pack. She bowed her head to me more than was necessary as she accepted it and wiped the tears below her eyes. Back to what I was thinking about, or rather talking about. It was creepy and unsettling to have her hear everything I thought. These were my unvarnished impressions.
そうだよね。ごめんなさい。でも、聞きたくなくても聞こえちゃうの。
Right, okay. Have fun, Kozupi. Is that so?
そうなの。
Okay, sure, we're gonna say yeppers. Well, whatever the case, you don't want to hear that from a gross otaku like me. A guy as creepy as me really doesn't have any value.
そんなことない。
Just as I was about to revert to depression mode, Kozupi cried out loudly in the voice of her heart.
ダメだよ。そんなこと言っちゃ。そんな悲しいこと。
She started streaming tears again. Why was she crying? Did she sympathize with me? If so, I don't need it. After all, I created personalities in my brain and mistook them for real live people. Rimi, for example.
それって咲畑さんじゃなかった。咲畑さんのこと？
Did you bite your tongue when telepathically talking to us? Because the fact that you ended up with Shan with an H when it's just San, it kind of seems like oh, I bit my tongue while telepathically talking, and thus I'm literally not using my tongue at all. You know her.
だってクラスメートだよ。
Well, that's good to know for our character. Rimi is in fact real.
西条くんの彼女さんなのら。
I don't think that's accurate. Wrong.
あ、違うの？てっきりそうだとばっかり思ってた。
I totally only thought she was. Kozupi knew about Rimi, which signified that Rimi truly existed. She wasn't my delusion. She wasn't a character I'd devised in my brain. Rimi really was there.
そうか。
Thank goodness. But if so, why hadn't she contacted me not even once? I must have fallen out of favor with her after what happened at Ofront.
咲畑さん、地震があったあの日、青い顔をして早退して行っちゃったのら。
Yes, because she's working with Shogun.
それ以来、学校来てないよ。
Although the two do also seem to have slightly different goals. It should be noted. Rimi seems to feel this need to protect Shogun, and we are, in her mind, a threat to Shogun's existence, and thus we need to be eliminated. However, Shogun requires us to continue to exist because there is something he wants us to do for him, apparently. Don't know what, have zero clue what it is, but there is apparently something that Shogun wants us to do for him. And he has no problem with us potentially killing him down the road.
もしかして家族に何か悲しいことがあったかも。
Yeah, I would assume Shogun might be family. It would sort of explain why she does what she does. I see. I felt delivered, knowing that Rimi hadn't thrown me aside, seriously made me feel, or made me seem about to cry. If that were the case, I had reason to attend school again. I wanted to see Rimi one more time. Until then, I'd try my hardest and keep going to school.
気をつけてね。
Okay, transfer student? Eh?
西条くんが咲畑さんと付き合ってるって思ってたから言わなかった。けど、 畑さんには気をつけて。
There you go again, biting your tongue. Like, literally, you're talking and you bite your tongue. But, again, it's telepathy. What do you mean?
咲畑さんはよくわかんないのら。
I'm asking what you mean. You don't get her, you say. The staking? Or how I was missing my memories of being classmates with her since freshman year? There were definitely things about Rimi that remained mysterious even now. But she saved me countless times. When I was frightened, she told me, I'll be there for you. She wasn't my enemy. For some reason, Kozupi's eyes were rolling back in her head. Okay.
そんなに一度にいっぱい考えられると。コズピー、ついていきにゃい。
And it makes your eyes roll back into your head. Okay. Because, you know, that's normal. Sorry. It was sort of odd. When I was talking to people, I generally ended up saying less than 2% of the conversation. But when I spoke in my heart, I talked too much, or rather, thought too much. It was the same for Kozupi. I hadn't thought she would be so talkative in her head, anyway.
喋ってるっていう感覚は薄いよ。
Probably because you're not.
考えてるだけ。それが流れ込むだけ。相手にはビビーって、相手からはドバーって。
Don't know what the beep beep and boom bang is. I don't think you're R2D2.
慣れてないと自分の思考と相手の思考がごちゃごちゃってなって、にゃーってなるの。
It gets all unya, you say. In Japanese, please? Although I sort of got the nuances of it. So there weren't any little subtleties, like in regular conversations. Things like seeing the other person's expression or finding yourself unable to say what you wanted wouldn't happen. If people's thoughts kept leaking out, you lose the ability to read the atmosphere. Neither a one-way or two-way transmission, it wasn't altogether unlike having to pick one flying arrow out of many and stop yourself from listening to the others.
だから気楽だし距離感も近いけど
Close, you say?
傷つくことも簡単なの。
Well, yeah, because some people probably find it creepy that you talk to them telepathically. And some people might forget and think things about you that you hear and then you're like, I didn't want to hear... Excuse me. I didn't want to hear that. For a second, Kozupi's face clouded over, but she soon put on a teary smile.
西条くんは初めてなのにすんごく上手だよ。
This is because our character has a lot of powers. A lot of various powers. And I might have bumped my microphone, so sorry if you hear a bang or a clang or whatever sound effect it makes.
コズピーとビビビが合うの。
My beep beep beeps. Was she trying to say that our wavelengths matched?
そう波長波長。
Well, it might have been because Sarah had the same kind of speech quirks.
あ、でもあの時の西条くんは怖かったの。おぴー。
Is this going to be when we had that delusion about her? I bet you it's going to be about that. Back then?
今日の朝教室で。
Yeah, okay. She could read those thoughts. Doesn't really surprise me. Yeah. Now that she mentioned it, I'd fantasized about some really bad stuff, hadn't I?
だから、うひゃーって思って、つい声をかけちゃったのら。本当はなるべくこの力を他の人に知られないようにしようって決めてたのに。
Sounds like a good idea. No, at the time I hadn't given a damn about anything. Well, they were mere delusions to the end, I guess. Haha. It'd been normal to despise me for it. Ah.
きっとそれを本当にやってたら、コズピーは西条くんを殺してたよ。
Oh, and we're gonna say that with a music note at the end. Okay. Eh? She said something so disturbing with innocence. The gap between the two made me shudder. We silently, albeit, continuing to speak in our minds, crossed through the shopping district and came out on Inokashira Avenue. From the way we walked wordlessly without glancing at each other's faces, an observer might have perceived us as a charmingly naive young couple. Next to me, Kozapi caught... Oops, sorry about that. Accidentally double pressed. Next to me, Kozapi caught an enormous breath. Eyes round, she looked up at me. No, it was just an example. An example. Sorry. Yeah, it was pretty hard to cope with how everything passed through to her. When talking with Kozapi, it would behoove me to do my best not to wander into unnecessary daydreams.
聞きたいな。先週の西条くんがテレビに出てた時のこと。
Of course she's gonna ask about it. This part is actually starting to run a little bit longer than I thought. I wanted to get to the end of this scene, but it's like I said, it's running a little longer than I would have liked. So I think we're gonna go ahead and end this part here. Little cliffhanger ending. And I will see you all next time. Quick reminder that I do have a Discord, which you can find a link to down below in the description. That is my go-to place for posting about the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with any changes to my recording or streaming schedule, that is the go-to place for doing that. I also will sometimes post links to certain things a little bit early there. Not videos, but, potentially there you'll get early announcements of like planned future series type things. Down in the description, you will also find a link to my Patreon, as well as a Streamlabs donation link. You can use whichever you prefer to use. Those are the two best ways to help support the channel if you find yourself enjoying this content or any other content on the channel. Patreon does take a 5% cut of whatever you give, but in exchange, they provide a nice, easy way for me to be able to give out early access to videos. As for Streamlabs, they do not provide a nice, easy way for me to be able to hand out giving early access to videos, because it's largely intended as a competitor to Twitch subscriptions, I'm pretty sure. So, especially when it comes to doing the monthly donations via Streamlabs. As a result, if you go that route, you do not get the early access to videos, but the channel takes home 100%, or pretty damn close. I believe the way I have it set up is that the channel will take home 100% of whatever it is that you decide to give. So those are there as an option. Use whichever one you prefer if you want to go ahead and support the channel financially. That allows me to be able to go and buy games, computer hardware, software, whatever, stuff that enables me to hopefully produce better and better content. It helps me out. So obviously up to you if you want to go ahead and support the channel financially. It's appreciated if you do, but there's obviously no requirement to go ahead and do so. But I like I said, I will see you all in the next part. Until then, goodbye and farewell.